Hello guys, this is Dungeon Master Noble coming at you with another video. This is going to be a video response to Dungeon Master Johnny's D&T video, All Your Dungeons Unrealistic. I want to talk about dungeons and realism today. Well, I do notice that a lot of dungeons are a little bit out there and crazy, like Dungeon Master Johnny said, and I've taken this into consideration. A lot of my dungeons don't even happen underground anymore that I have planned anyways. The one dungeon I am using underground is set in an abandoned dwarven city, and there's not a whole lot of unrealistic things down there. It's buildings, there's a flooded district, stuff like that, and it's been overran by an infestation of mean locks, and yeah, I might even do a dungeon delve on that sometime later, but right now I'm talking about Dungeons and Realism. I usually have, if my players are going to go into a dungeon, it's usually an abandoned fort, tower, or even a town that is occupied, and then they're tracking down a killer, or one time I had them tracking down a cult for this organization they were working for, and it turned out basically the entire town was the cult, and that played out pretty cool. But yeah, sometimes dungeons can get a little crazy, like if you put one small room underground, that's not going to be a significant dungeon, of course, but there's the problem where you got too big and too small. If the dungeon goes on for like 20 rooms or something underground, and you don't have a good legitimate story and reasoning for the dungeon being down there, then it gets a little crazy. Like, okay guys, you go into this cave and there's a entrance to an abandoned underground fortress here or something like that, and you don't have any reasoning for it. There's no reason why the fortress is there, don't have the history of who built it, don't have reasons why the creatures are living there. That's another thing I do in mine. Always have reasons for creatures being there. Now, I've learned from a lot of different people on YouTube, why would these kobolds be living right next to these orcs and they'd have no conflict? I'm not saying they can't, but I'm saying you need a reason. Maybe the kobolds and the orcs are working together to help secure the dungeon, or find food for one another and stuff like that. Or maybe they're having skirmishes off and on and stuff like that. You need to have reasoning for it. And why isn't this trap set off? Is there intelligent creatures to avoid the trap? If there's like a room full of zombies, then a zombie's probably going to trigger a trap on accident eventually. So, like Woodward said before, I believe it was Woodward, he said that, like I was giving an example of the zombie thing, have traps in there that already been sprung. You see a zombie, not even, he hasn't even been killed by a trap, like a still undead zombie trapped in the trap, and use it to like scare your players when they come near it or something, or they hear his groans off in the distance and they come and investigate and he's just stuck on like a spike trap or something. That'd be a lot more interesting than, oh, generic trap here. One thing I've done in the past with traps is I've made them with a purpose. This trap was put here by this person for a reason, not a random spike pit in the middle of the dungeon for no absolute reason. Makes no sense how it would got there in the first place. Traps always have a reason. Monsters always need to have a reason. If you got reasoning and not crazy far-fetched reasoning, then dungeons can become a lot better, well, in depth. Leave records around. Maybe there's some ancient records or something for your players to find out why was this dungeon abandoned and how did these new creatures get here. Like with the city I was telling you about, they found some ancient dwarven tablets and they found out why the city was abandoned, how it got overran by the creatures that were inhabiting it and all that. And all these things can make your dungeons come to life more and be more realistic and be more organic, and let your players have an effect on it. And if they come into the dungeon and then leave, don't instantly respawn all the creatures or anything like that. Just let the creatures that survived either rebuild, or maybe they just move on. Maybe they're like, this place is too dangerous now, move on. The players come back and that's been either more fortified or completely abandoned. Not the same thing over and over again. And like I said with traps before, maybe this place has been attacked now, and they're like, okay, they came in through here. We're gonna put a crude or professional trap, depending on what was living in the dungeon. Dungeons can be used by mercenaries, kobolds, goblins, bugbears, dragons, ogre. All these things are prime dungeons inhabitants, and you gotta look at their intelligence to see if they know how to prepare this dungeon and who the dungeon was made by. If a dungeon was made by expert dwarven craftsmen who have rigged it with traps in strategic locations to prevent assault, and somehow the traps haven't went off yet, think about that before what you put in there. How is a stupid ogre with like 6 intelligence or something like that going to get through all these traps in and out of the dungeon, never triggering the traps, but then your players trigger the traps? Like that, you always have to consider all of these things. And well, that's more or less my stance on dungeons and realism. And I'll put a link to the description of Dungeon Master Johnny's video. And as always, have a nice day. Dungeon Master John, Dungeon Master Loba, signing off. And I gotta